And after he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
Good morning. Although we only read one biblical text today, there really are 4 assigned. An Old Testament, a Psalm, a New Testament scripture, and the gospel that you just heard. The compilers of the Revised Common Lectionary make these assignments based on the liturgical seasons of the church and their connections between each of those texts based on those seasons. Sometimes they're a puzzle, a little hard to figure out, obscure, but then there's weeks where it's pretty clear and the connections are rather easy. In the process of working through this gospel text that you just heard, I'll be pulling together pieces of these other citations and make some connections to ourselves gathered here. For the next 2 weeks, we're in a season of Epiphany. Christmas was about 5 weeks ago, and this Epiphany season is a connection between that fixed date of Christmas and the flexible dates around Easter and the rest of the church year, which are based on a completely different calendar. But what is an epiphany? It's not a word that we use regularly. At times it's a surprise, something unexpected, perhaps an alteration of previous understandings of something. Epiphany is a time when we take what we think we know and try to find other ways to look at it. Or better stated, let's look at these texts for today and see what we might find, perhaps a new understanding. The psalm that's assigned for today is Psalm 15. Mercifully, it's short, and I'm going to read it. The psalmist is speaking and asking a question. Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? And then the psalmist answers the question. One who is blameless, who walks or does what's right, righteous, who speaks the truth from the heart, whose tongue utters no slander, who does no wrong to their neighbor, and casts no slur on others, who despises the vile person but honors those who fear the Lord, one who does not change their mind, who lends money to the poor without interest, who does not accept a bribe against the innocent. Whoever does these things will never be shaken. So do you hear anything in that psalm that sounds like the gospel text for today? The Beatitudes, the text that Julie just read. This is what's going on in Matthew 5. Jesus is offering a glimpse into the mind of God. At no point in his life did Jesus ever say, "Dad told me to tell you." Or, in using more modern terms, "Oh, by the way, I just got this email this morning from Dad." Jesus walks with us and looks through a window into the mind of God. He uses parable stories, other explanations, and tell us God the Father is like. Jesus knew well the times that he was living in and the economic state of Israel in those years. The assumption can then be made that the hearer of that day would have understood what he was saying. But did they get it? I'm not always sure. Any more than we do some things now, 2,000 years later, after a lot of exploration. Jesus addressed them in language they could understand and methods that they could understand. This is one of those gospel messages, one of these epiphanies, a new understanding that Jesus is offering, a new look at how God the Father sees things. With this particular group of verses, the Beatitudes, he tells us what God thinks is important. Some Bible translations start with blessed. Other translations have happy are. Coming into English, I'm not sure these are the best words. Blessed in these verses could easily be construed as patting ourselves on the back if we do this or that and get something right, sort of like scoring credits or points in some big tally book in the sky. Other translations use happiness in their translations. Happy are the poor. Happiness is being poor. I don't think so. To take another look, the word blessed comes from the Greek. The word is makarios. It comes into the English as bliss or blissful. Blissful are the poor, for they will know bliss. Or better still, they will know the bliss of the kingdom of heaven. To take a moment, bliss might be defined as a state of being where we can find our inner peace, our inner quiet. This could be found, having this word bliss, as the kingdom now. Gary, 2 weeks ago, spoke of the kingdom as here and now, but not yet. And that's exactly how bliss could be understood, both temporal and eternal. Along the way, then, the Beatitudes tell us how we should live around and with others. There is an insert in your bulletin paper today, and I've kind of rewritten it a little bit. Linda will put it up for the people on Zoom. I will use blessed to start, but then I've rewritten the second phrase for each of these statements with these adjustments of bliss for your consideration. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Or, they will know the bliss of being with Jesus. Blessed are those who mourn. They will know the bliss of being held eternally in God's arms. Blessed are the meek. They will know the bliss of a new creation. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. They will know the bliss of fullness. Blessed are the merciful, for they will know the bliss of mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will know the bliss of seeing God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will know the bliss of peace. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness' sake. They will know the bliss of the new eternal kingdom. Take a moment. Does this say anything new to you? Let's go in a bit of a new direction. There's a lot of action words here. Peacemakers, mourners, the merciful. These are the people who are called to take care of others. We are those people. This is one of those Matthew 25:40 places where we can plug in the text, in that you have done it to these, so you have done it to me. It is like this with the Beatitudes. When we show mercy, grace, or peace, we are doing it to God and for God. Some 30 plus years ago, I was asked to lead a Sunday school class with a bunch of high schoolers. And the idea of putting me in front of children is just frightening. We were together for a number of years. These were mostly high school juniors and seniors. They all knew each other. Boise has a lot of high schools. They did not all go to the same schools, but they all knew each other. We would talk on any given Sunday about what was going on in their lives. I would start with the lectionaries just because it was the basis, and then they were going to be going on from this class we were together into the worship, and they would hear these texts again, and maybe there was some foundational stuff going on there. But we would talk about all manner of stuff that happened to them that week, how they reacted to it, how they thought about it later and said, maybe I didn't get this quite right. And then they got into a conversation about doing stuff for God, doing stuff for Jesus. And it was a great conversation, and then it stalled. And I'm not sure what happened. The conversation just stalled. Well, I don't deal well with a lot of quiet. And so I asked them a question. I said, what's Santa Claus's address? Now they knew that this old guy had gone over the edge. They knew he had finally cracked. And I said, I'm serious. What's his address? What street number? What zip code? Now they were convinced. This guy's. Finally, one young lady said, well, there is no address. Exactly. I said, where do you go to do stuff for God? To do stuff for Jesus? Where do you take your bucket of water and your squeegee and wash God's windows? Where do you go on a Saturday and go cut his grass? Now they had it. Oh, it's about others. Yep. The Beatitudes are this place where we are encouraged to do things for God, to show grace, peace, and caring. It's a lifestyle with the help of God that we create. It's not a passive resignation of hardships, but it's an opportunity to take the hardships as they come along, both ours and others, and help each other through those tough times. It's not for us to pick and choose who we might do this for. We're not to own our service for others for our own benefit. We are not to dole out aid when we choose and to whom. It's about what's in front of us right now, when it presents itself. There's a spontaneity in that. Last week, Jim ran a short video called Ripples, and Linda put it in the Thursday news notes. You can go back and see it and watch it again. It's a story of some spontaneous actions. For me, it was a borderline tearjerker. It was a really emotional story. In telling of the Beatitudes, Jesus is suggesting that before all of this, there's a couple of things we need to understand as being blessed people. You are eternally and unconditionally loved by God. We are also reminded that the kingdom in which we dwell is both now and not yet. This state of being, this blissfulness, can also be now where we live in and now with the not yet of the eternal kingdom. Jesus is also telling us that these values, his values, will not always align with the world's values. For example, blessed are the meek, the merciful, the pure in heart, and the others. Jesus' description of this as a way of living was vastly different from the surrounding culture of the time that he lived. And clearly, it's not aligned to what we see today. Jesus saw the shortcomings of the world in the times he was living in, and we can see the shortcomings of the world that we live in now, looking only over the last few weeks in Minnesota. The Beatitudes are not about being ethically superior to others, but living out more the how God wants us to be. Blessed, happy, at peace with ourselves, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, and as a collective effort. I'm back to this word bliss, the blissful nature of our here, but not yet. So let's bring this forward a bit to our life here at Hyde Park. Think of the missions we participate in. Corpus Commons, Sanctuary, the community shelter dinners at the Presbyterian Church, the Albino Project you just heard about in Tanzania, Braver Angels, and perhaps many others that you can think of that we as a church are involved with. There's a lot of overlap in those services. And there's a lot of overlap in the people here that participate with those agencies and in those services. Each of those agencies and people here can be connected to one or another of the Beatitudes. Those who mourn, those who are oppressed, those who our society has failed or left behind. The peacemakers, and it's only a short step to the Lucan imperatives of what to do with the homeless, the hungry, the widow, the imprisoned. These activities are not about perfect behaviors, always getting things right, but rather our intentions of doing these things. It's about our attempts to make life for others a bit easier. When we acknowledge people, when we sit for a time with them, trying to understand their situations, it doesn't require us to have all the right words, all the right answers. Sometimes just being with them in silence. It might only be a sharing of this bliss with someone for a short time, with outcomes that we may never be aware of or ever see. But nothing is lost in the eye of God. So for now, perhaps you've heard something that is new or an idea that creates a new way of seeing something in these texts. That, then, is an epiphany. And this is accomplished in this post-Christmas season, a new way of seeing. Returning to the psalm for today, to be blameless. And the gospel assigned with the Beatitudes, now hear the words of the prophet. This was the Old Testament citation for today. You thought I forgot. Gary, over the last weeks, has used this text in his closing remarks, and I'm going to use it again because it is the Old Testament text out of the prophets assigned to today. From Micah 6. What is required of you? To act justly, to love mercy, walk humbly with your God. May it be so.